Hi, this is our last presentation on behavior as communication. This is the final part for focusing on reinforcement, both positive and negative reinforcement, other behavior change procedures, extinction, and punishment. So let's talk about those. Those are big concepts. Excuse me. Okay, reinforcement. Such a powerful tool if you use it well. So what's the definition of reinforcement? It's a procedure. It's something that's presented immediately following a behavior that has the effect of increasing the future rate of that behavior. So it is defined by its effect. So we don't know all the time if what we're doing will serve as reinforcement. We only know if it was reinforcing if the behavior occurs again. And so oftentimes we see people, oh yeah, I gave them a reinforcer, or, well, did it reinforce? Did the behavior occur again because of that? And if it didn't, then it wasn't a reinforcer. It was simply an item or a reward, but it didn't necessarily reinforce the behavior to occur again. So it's important to know the definition and know that you're actually looking for the behavior to occur again. And then you know that it was reinforcing. That's how we maintain behavior, through reinforcement. So this is a reinforcement continuum, and this is by Diana Browning Wright, who is the goddess of behavioral support in California. If you look her up, you can find a lot of great resources for supporting students' behavior in public schools in California. Lots of trainings, and we'll see more of her stuff this summer when we do a little bit of our work in the ASD class. But she talks about the reinforcement continuum, that there's various types of reinforcement that you can use to help maintain behavior for individuals. And I'm sure you use a lot on yourself and others in your life. The lowest is primary or edibles. And so think about food as a reinforcer, edible reinforcers, which if you go into a classroom supporting kids with extensive support needs or moderate severe disabilities, you might see them using edibles or goldfish crackers or half of a Oreo cookie to shape behavior and to reinforce certain skills. It's attractive to teachers because it's quick. It's you don't have to pull an iPad back from them to get them to work again. They eat and it's gone and it's done. So it's short. But the problem is it's the lowest type of reinforcement. It's hard to maintain, especially if kids are, if they get full. And if they satiate, then reinforcers aren't, primary reinforcers like edibles aren't as powerful. If they have dietary issues, if, we have to think of their health and things. So there's lots of problems with using primary or edibles. Tangibles are things that people are reinforcers. So you might use tangibles too for yourself in terms of, okay, well, if I get through this class or I do this, then I'm going to Target, or, getting a tangible or an item, so that you'll do the behavior again. So if it reinforces you to do the behavior again, it's a reinforcer. Closure is a reinforcing activity when someone feels that something is complete or finishing something. So finishing a list, or finishing a task, or finishing a puzzle, or finishing a book, those kind of closure kinds of things. It's a feeling that is reinforcing, that will cause you to do the behavior again because of the way it made you feel. Contingent access, so first then or if then. So if I do this, then I get that. First schoolwork, then free time. Those kind of things serve as contingent access. Reinforcers such as privileges are powerful, especially in classrooms, because they're not items that the teacher has to buy or food. They're privileges such as doing something special in the classroom, having some special job or recognition, which is actually the next one, was social status and recognition. So social status and recognition, getting acceptance and attention from peers and adults, which is things like good grades or some kind of attention in terms of their social status is important. And then praise from parents or teachers or other staff. is powerful. And finally, intrinsic. So the self-praise or self-satisfaction. So kids doing things because they feel good about it and it gives them self-satisfaction. So obviously we want to all be as high as possible, but for many of our kids or skills that are hard to learn or not preferred, we might be using lower level reinforcements. Reinforcers, they often say to pair them with higher reinforcers such as social status or praise. So if you are giving a tangible or using a token system or using edibles, then you want to make sure it's very clear as to, good job using your words today. Good job asking for a break appropriately, so that they know exactly what the behavior is. And maybe they're also getting an item or a tangible or an edible, but you're pairing it with praise or higher level reinforcement. So it's a powerful tool. So let's talk about the different types of reinforcement. There's two types, positive and negative reinforcement. And oftentimes people think positive reinforcement's good, negative reinforcement is bad. And that is not true. So let's kind of just talk about how those two are different. So reinforcement itself means that if reinforcement occurs after a behavior, the likelihood of that behavior happening again is great. So if a behavior is reinforced, it will most likely occur again and be maintained. So that's the nature of reinforcement. Positive just means that something has been added to the situation. So positive reinforcement occurs when a behavior is followed immediately by the presentation of a stimulus as a result of the behavior. The behavior occurs more often. So what does that mean? As I said, the biggest misconception is that the term positive reinforcement is that positive doesn't mean good. It just necessarily means something has been added. So a positive means plus. I've added something. So it should be called added or plus reinforcement. It means you're adding something to the situation, and by adding something tangible or intangible, you increase the likelihood that the behavior will occur again. So positive reinforcement is the concept that most of us are familiar with, but I'll give you a couple examples. So here's an example. A baby cries and you pick them up. They stop crying. You put them down, they cry again. You pick them up and they stop. The crying behavior is being reinforced by you adding picking up. So the baby is learning that the crying will get you to pick them up, so the behavior increases. So this is positive reinforcement. I'm not saying that picking up a baby is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm simply saying it was added to the situation. It met the function for the baby, so the behavior will most likely happen again. It was positively reinforced. Something was added to the environment to have the behavior be maintained or happen again. Positive reinforcement. So here's Johnny. Johnny, while sitting at circle time, makes weird noises. You say, "Stop that, Johnny." And a minute later, Johnny is back at it. And you say, "Johnny, go change your clip." Lovely system. Johnny comes back to the carpet and a few minutes later is back at it, and so on. So you are adding attention and reinforcing the weird noise behavior. So this is positive reinforcement. It's not necessarily a good behavior that you're reinforcing, but you are positively reinforcing it. It is positive because you are adding attention, and it is reinforcing because that's most likely the function of the kid's behavior, so it will occur again. So this is positive reinforcement. Not necessarily a good use of positive reinforcement, but it is positive reinforcement. So your husband does 25 push-ups one morning. Later in the day, you feel his bicep and say, "Wow, honey." The next day, he gets up and does 35 push-ups. Later in the day, you feel his bicep and you say, "What a hunk." The next day, it's 45 push-ups. So you adding the attention and compliments increases his push-up behavior. So you have engaged in positive reinforcement. So you have added something and you have done something to give him social praise. So most likely the behavior will occur again. So you have positively reinforced the behavior. Let's watch a little video about the power of positive behavior, positive reinforcement. And it's just funny. So let's not have a free trial here.
Finished? Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Oh, hey, Kim. Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall. You'll never guess who they got to replace you at work.
Okay. I know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. You're using chocolates as enforcement for what you can behavior.
Very good. Chocolate?
Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat.
Actually, it turns out I can.
Well, you shouldn't.
There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose.
All right. There's a little comic relief, but also talks about the ethics around using reinforcement as a powerful, it absolutely is a powerful tool. And so I think it brings up a good point as to what we decide as the appropriate behavior and what behaviors we're reinforcing and what behaviors we're not. And so that's also kind of a downfall about ABA, is that it can be used as a little bit too controlling and compliance-based, whereas positive behavior supports really works on building skills and reinforcing behaviors that will help the individual and not necessarily control the individual. So these tools are powerful and they can be misused, but they also can be used effectively to help build skills and shape appropriate behaviors. So moving on to negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement occurs when the removal of a certain stimuli increases the future probability of behavior when they are terminated immediately following a response. So again, the biggest misconception is that negative reinforcement is bad. It's not necessarily bad. It just means you're taking something away from the situation. And by taking something away, you want to increase the likelihood of the behavior occurring because it still is reinforcement. So you want the behavior to increase, to occur again. So let's give you some examples. So example, a baby is sitting quietly playing in the living room. Mom puts on loud music and the baby begins to cry. Mom turns off the music and the baby stops crying. The mom, a few minutes later, turns it back on and the baby starts crying again. Mom turns off the music. The increase of crying behavior occurs by turning off and taking the music away. So the baby gets relief from the noise, which will increase future crying behavior when music is on. So again, we have the increase of the crying behavior, which is reinforcement. And then we have the removal of the music, which is negative. So you're taking something away. So it's negative reinforcement. Johnny is in social studies and he hates social studies. During the class, he talks more to his neighbors. You tell him to go sit outside the room. The next day, Johnny is talking again during social studies. You send him out. Johnny realizes he can escape social stories by talking to his neighbor. Your removal of him from the class, the negative, is increasing the likelihood that he will engage in future disruption. So again, this is reinforcement, negative reinforcement. The behavior will occur again. It's not a behavior we want to see again, but we are negatively reinforcing it. So it's good for us to understand these concepts so that when we're analyzing situations, we can kind of see, oh, we are reinforcing that behavior. Oh, that was us. But we're doing it, we're negatively reinforcing it, or we're positively reinforcing it. And so that helps us make changes in our own behavior that will most likely shape a child's behavior. Here's my husband example. Your husband is sitting on the couch watching football. You ask him to take out the garbage. He says he hurt his shoulder doing push-ups and he can't lift the lid. So you stop asking and take it out yourself. The next Sunday he's watching again and you ask again. He brings up his shoulder again. So you stop asking. Your removal of the demand as a stimulus, results in the future likelihood, reinforcement, that his saying his shoulder hurt behavior will increase so that he can escape the chore. Again, negative reinforcement, probably a behavior you don't want to reinforce, but by removing the task, you will reinforce the behavior. So what does this all mean? Everything is dependent on the function of the behavior, or what the behavior is trying to communicate. All your interventions, every way you're reacting to the environment, the way the environment is triggering the behavior, everything is related to that function. So common misconception is that when talking about reinforcement, you're talking about what's happening in the present, but we're really talking about future likelihood of the behavior increasing. So again, we want, if we're using reinforcement procedures, positive or negative, we want the behavior to increase again. We want to see that happening. Other types of procedures like punishment will want to see the behavior not increase and decrease. So takeaways, reinforcement always means you want to increase the behavior. Positive means you're adding something, negative means you're taking something away. That's reinforcement. There's some rules for reinforcement that I think are powerful, because I think people often misuse or don't use reinforcement to its potential. So that's where I often see, when I was an autism specialist and behavior support teacher, in San Diego Unified, I noticed that people were not using reinforcement correctly. Either they wasn't happening frequently enough, it wasn't appropriate, or it wasn't actually reinforcing, means it didn't actually cause the behavior to occur again. So these are some handy rules when you're thinking about using reinforcement. First is that reinforcers should actually be reinforcing, which means kids actually like them and it will actually cause the behavior to happen again. So you need to do some analysis here in terms of, will this reinforcer, social praise, edibles, tangibles, will it actually help build new skills? Will the behavior be maintained? Because if it's not, then it's not serving as a reinforcer and you need to look for something else. Reinforcement should be contingent, meaning it should be because the behavior was exhibited, because they asked for a break, because they used their device, because they did the behavior that your replacement behavior. If it's just kind of willy-nilly, like, I'm feeling good today, everyone's getting reinforcement, that's not it. Then the teacher will be like, I don't know why I get stickers or where I get praise. It's just when the teacher's mood is good. So you want to make sure that it's actually contingent and it's actually based on the replacement behaviors occurring or desired behaviors occurring. Number 3 is a variety of reinforcers should be used so kids don't get sick of them, so that you don't get sick of them, so that you have access to them in different environments. So try to have as much variety there. There's lots of reinforcement inventories or questionnaires so that you can get to know what kids are interested in using as reinforcers. Social reinforcers should be paired with primaries. And I said that earlier. If you are going to use tangibles or tokens or edibles, that you want to make sure you're also pairing it with social reinforcers such as praise. Continuously develop and identify reinforcers so that kids are excited by different things or different types of reinforcers. Use appropriate reinforcers, meaning use things that are age appropriate, that are not going to stigmatize them in any way, and mostly just really make sure that they're age appropriate. Unpredictability and novelty often enhance reinforcement. So using a mystery box, doing toys that are, in blind bags, they call them, or in boxes where they don't know what the item is, that can be exciting for kids, and it often makes a little plastic toy way more exciting. It certainly works on my children, that's for sure. Reinforcement should occur immediately. I think the research says that 1.5 seconds is the prime time to offer reinforcement after a behavior occurs. You just want kids to know that I'm giving you praise, or I'm giving you reinforcement because of that behavior. But be careful, you don't want to, break up a social interaction or an academic instruction time because they've raised their hand, or, maybe it's appropriate to wait a little bit and say, hey, I really like the way you raised your hand several times, instead of calling out or instead of smacking the person next to you, so it should occur immediately, but there are certain times when it's more appropriate to occur later. Number 9 is the reinforcement schedule should be followed consistently. So as a team, you're going to create a schedule of reinforcement in terms of how often the child is going to be accessing a reinforcer. I'd say people most err on not giving enough reinforcement. So I would err on giving them too much and to slowly change the schedule and stretch it out. So it really depends on how frequent the behavior is occurring, how intense the behavior is, and what type of reinforcers you are using. So there's lots of variables there. Reinforcement should be faded over time. So once the behavior is maintained, then it doesn't have to occur every time. Maybe it occurs every 5th time. Maybe it occurs every 10th time. Maybe it occurs just sometimes. So an intermittent kind of reinforcement schedule can be very powerful. So, but eventually should be faded once the behavior is established. Evaluate the timing of the reinforcement. So this goes back to number 8 in terms of maybe we shouldn't break up that social situation to tell him he did a good job turn taking there. Maybe we should wait until, the end of the day, or maybe we should wait till the end of the period. So evaluate the timing of the reinforcement to make sure it's actually appropriate and not causing kind of stress for kids. Do not use rewards as bribery. That will only work one time. So if a child is up in a tree and the principal's coming and you're doing an observation, you could probably bribe the kid down with something, but chances are very good that kid will be up in a tree again and your bribery will no longer work. So it only works once and then never again. So try not to use what you think is reinforcers as bribery to get the kids to do things, because you will lose that game. Differentiate reinforcement. Differentiating reinforcement is powerful. Basically, it means choose what you're going to reinforce versus other things that you're going to ignore. So there'll be times when kids have received attention or other types of reinforcement for behaviors. You're going to start deciding, well, I'm going to ignore that behavior now, and I'm going to differentiate my reinforcement, and I'm only going to offer attention or, escape or whatever if this behavior occurs. You're going to differentiate what you reinforce versus what you don't. So it does require a plan on your part in terms of how you're going to differentiate reinforcement, but it's an excellent way to kind of extinguish reinforcement from a behavior that has been reinforced for a long time. So that no longer is going to get you attention, but doing this will. And so that's how I'm going to differentiate how I reinforce. And the last part is labeling the behavior to be reinforced. Make sure they know that it's contingent on the behavior and that the behavior is the replacement behavior. So good job asking for help. Good job asking for a break. Yeah, let's take a break. Good job, trying to think of another replacement behavior. Good job using your device. Good job doing whatever. So you want to make sure that they understand, like, oh, that's the behavior that they like, and that's why I'm getting access to reinforcers. So always labeling the behavior. Okay. Other behavior change procedures that you might use or be interested in. They have fancy names, of course. So the first is a differential reinforcement of other, a DRO. So this is reinforcing all behavior that is not the one targeted for reduction. So basically, any other behavior receives reinforcement. Good job doing that. Good job doing this. Good job doing that. But then when the problem behavior occurs, there's no reinforcement. So it's everything but that will get reinforcement. So this can be tricky because sometimes you're inadvertently reinforcing other problematic behaviors. So it's not used as commonly, but it is an option. The next one I think is used, the next two are used probably more frequently. The DRA, which is a differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors. So targeting one behavior for reinforcement while reducing the other. So think about if you're trying to change your eating habits. So you're going to no longer get any reward from eating, junk food, but every time you have a healthy food, you're going to get some type of a reinforcement. So you have an alternative behavior. So the behavior you're wanting to decrease is eating junk food, And the behavior you want to increase is eating healthy food. So every time you eat healthy food, the alternative behavior, that's when you can access a reinforcer. So you can buy a new outfit or go get a new yoga mat or something that's reinforcing to you. And that would serve as a DRA. So those are often used to shape behavior, is really giving that alternative behavior lots of access to reinforcer, and the junk food one no longer will get any type of reinforcement. Another behavior change procedure is a DRI, and this is differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. So these are reinforcing behavior that makes it impossible to engage in the other behavior. So this can be used for kids who are doing things like hitting themselves or hitting other kids. You want to give them a behavior that they're doing something else with their hands, so that if they're doing that other thing with their hands, they're not actually able to hit the child. So good job with your reading hands, good job with your writing hands, good job with your whatever hands. So it's all different types of incompatible behaviors that you're providing reinforcement for that are incompatible to doing the other one. So think about a child who may be running too frequently and you need them to slow down and walk. So the incompatible behavior is if you're walking, you cannot run. So you reinforce walking, whereas you don't reinforce running. So they're incompatible behaviors. They can occur at the same time. So that one is used frequently to make behavior plans. Extinction, I've talked a little bit about extinction already, and that is actually withholding reinforcement for behavior that has been reinforced in the past. So the goal is to make the problem behaviors ineffective, meaning, yeah, this maybe worked for you in the past, but it's not going to work anymore. This is difficult to implement, especially if you're in a school situation or a clinic, or because oftentimes you can't control how other people react in the environment. So that if misbehaving or some behavior got them attention before, you need to make sure that no one in the room is giving that child attention. So it is hard to actually implement effectively. But if you're just working alone with a child and you can be in control of all the variables, then extinction is powerful because it doesn't work anymore. So you don't get attention anymore for that behavior. You don't get attention or escape for, you don't get to escape this task like you used to in the past. Like, it's not going to go away. We're going to sit here until it's done. So that can be hard because often what happens is a burst. They call it an extinction burst, meaning if they've had a behavior that has worked for them for many, many years or many, many environments, and all of a sudden it stops working, they're going to be like, okay, well, you're just harder. You're just, I can break you too, like I've broken other people. So the behavior will actually see this burst, meaning that it'll occur and it'll often get worse before it gets better because kids are a little upset that this doesn't work anymore. And so it's just going to get louder, or it's going to get, the room's going to be ripped apart a little bit more. So that's why extinction can be difficult, because it's sometimes hard to get through that extinction burst and make sure kids are safe. And so extinction is not used too frequently, but if you can control the variables and confirm that you can keep kids safe, then it's powerful. But it should be used the combination of prompts and reinforcement to teach the skills. So it's not just about getting through it. It's also about like, hey, but if you want to escape the task, you could just ask for a break. So functional communication here is often the replacement behavior. So freaking out like that or kicking and screaming, it's not going to get you a break. But if you step up to the desk and use the break card or hit the break button or give me whatever, then you will get a break. So that's the alternative behaviors, and using reinforcement to make sure that they do get a break if they use the functional communication. So it can be powerful. The last concept we're going to talk about is punishment. So punishment also, there can be negative punishment and positive punishment. So we learned about positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. So punishment is just the opposite, meaning that you want to reduce the future occurrence of the particular behavior. So you could add something like positive punishment, so adding something to the situation so that the behavior decreases, or negative punishment is taking something away from the situation so that the behavior decreases. So I think I have I don't know if I have any examples, but adding, again, something to, oh, I do, adding something to reduce the future behavior. So like a timeout or changing their color card or their clip in class, is you're adding something situation in the hopes that it will actually decrease the behavior. Taking some negative punishment is taking something away to reduce the future behavior. So taking a toy away if they hit their sibling or they hit their friend, loss of computer time, those kind of things are negative punishment. So I think either are used, but you want to make sure that they're actually decreasing the behavior, because sometimes what we think of as positive punishment or negative punishment is actually reinforcing the behavior. So you just want to make sure that if you're implementing that strategy, it's actually working and the behavior is being decreased. So you want to make sure you check that out. So some of the takeaways that I hope you've gotten from the 3-part presentation that I put together for you guys is that behavior is communication. The kids are not misbehaving just to make your day bad. Well, those kids do exist and they might be with you sometimes, but typically 90% of the time kids are misbehaving or having problematic behavior because they're trying to tell us that something's not going well. And our goal is understanding the function or communicative intent of the behavior. And then once we understand what that is, then our goal is teaching them better skills and reinforcing those new skills so that they can communicate more effectively, they can function in the environment more effectively. And it's not necessarily about compliance and getting kids to do what we want them to do to make our day better. It's about giving them new skills to help build their lives, and so that they can have relationships and be a happy, productive individual like we all want to be. So we're going to be talking a lot more about these concepts as we move into the autism spectrum disorder seminar this summer, more specifically about the characteristics of autism and how they impact behavior, like communication and socialization and sensory and movement. And so now you kind of have a nice foundation of some of the concepts we'll be building off even more when we get to summer. So I can't wait to see you guys even more. I wish I could be with you guys, but we will see each other virtually soon. Okay, thanks. Hope you enjoyed these presentations.